new enterprise takes time to start sending down roots. I mean, you walk in and you say, hi, we do Irish theatre. Well, it takes time to build a reputation, it takes time to build an audience, it takes time to build trust that we know what we're doing it extremely well. It's Irish in that it's specific to a time and place, but even more important, it's universal because it deals with situations, emotions that anybody can understand.
Tony and Susan Reilly came to Portland, Maine from New York City in 1997. They wanted to experience a change of lifestyle in a smaller city, and they gave themselves a year to do this before moving back. During that year, the Reillys looked into the possibility of starting an Irish theatre company in the area. So they produced a show they wrote themselves called The Women of Ireland. The production was well received, and the Reillys were satisfied that Portland would be a good place to start an Irish theatre company. They went back to New York, determined to save enough money to return and continue what they had started. They did this 5 years later and founded AIRE, the American Irish Repertory Ensemble. I found AIRE when my family moved to southern Maine in 2005. AIRE was performing The Playboy of the Western World at the time. I immediately thought how much I would love to do a documentary on the Reillys. I had produced several documentaries before on other people who had followed their hearts and were doing things they loved to do, and Tony and Susan fit that mold.
The 1 gallon whiskey jug.
All projects present some difficulties, and this one was no different. I was unable to get permission to use any footage of AIRE's performance of the play they were producing. The film rights had been sold, and the company who licenses the theatre rights didn't know who owned them. I searched, but I couldn't find out either. I wrestled with this for a few months until I began to see similarities between the development and passing of fictional theatrical worlds and that of worlds that we as individuals experience in the course of our lives. I had some home video as well as some film my mother had taken when she was young that I thought I could use to suggest metaphorically parallel developments between the life of a play and the unfolding life of ordinary individuals. This is what I did, and I began at one of the defining periods for me, which was growing up in Ireland in the 1970s. This was a decade that, with hindsight, had a definite beginning and end. Many changes were going on during that time, but I have only recently come to see them clearly, which is close to 40 years later. The passage of time has focused events and made them more apparent as being a part of history. Old traditions and beliefs were giving way to that of the newer generations, but the older traditions were not being replaced overnight, and many are still evident today, but not as much as they were. I remember things like going to a faith healer when I was 13 years old so I could be cured of ringworm, and being warned very ominously to not have anything to do with cutting a neighbour's damaged tree because it was a fairy tree, and the fairies would put a curse on anyone who did such a thing. And I remember waiting with hundreds of other townspeople as the body of a hunger striker came through our town for burial in his home place nearby. I remember too going to outdoor music festivals to see the Rolling Stones and other acts that were too big for any indoor venue in Ireland at the time. I remember Christmas Eve in our town, with families having done the Christmas shopping, gathered together in pubs to talk, sing songs, and recite poetry. There is no permanence to life. It is forever changing, although it can be difficult to notice at times. I still call Ireland home, but I realize now that when I refer to home, I am referring to more than the place. I am referring to the time too. For me, it is the 1970s, and because of that, it means home, in the way that I use the word, is not really real. It's a memory. In 1981, I was out of work for 6 months and had to leave along with a friend of mine to find employment. We were copies of our parents who had emigrated a generation before and our grandparents who had done the same, except we had joined the US Navy, so we felt fairly safe that we were going to continue to be fed wherever we ended up. A I don't think either of us really knew what it was we were leaving behind, or that it would be so final. For me, as I went through boot camp in Florida and on to California, it was as if I was losing certain instincts that caused me to question who I was and what I really knew. I had to relearn things. Little things like looking left instead of right when crossing the street and not getting knocked down in the process. Little things done wrong add up and make you feel stupid and confused because you know you used to know things, but now that wasn't so clear. But after a while you get the hang of the new culture and you start to recover. You feel your soul returning. Where had it been? It's as if it had stayed behind and returned to the village, quietly slipping away as I waited at the departure gate at the airport. But now, just as quietly, it was returning. Not all at once. It comes back in bits and pieces over the years. But you don't become the person that you were before. You become what you are now. And for me, that is an Irish American. There are things that enable this transformation. There are people you fall in love with, people who help you get settled, people who look out for you, and people who become good friends. And there are the people who keep the Irish culture and traditions alive. Tony and Susan Reilly are two of those people, as are the cast and crew members who work with them as part of AIRE. I spent 8 weeks with them in the spring of 2010 as they prepared to perform Juno and the Paycock, a Sean O'Casey play. It was a very good show. I wouldn't want to have seen it as a youngster, maybe because it would have cut too close to the bone with its themes of poverty, betrayal and violence. It is set in the 1920s, but a lot of what it deals with was apparent in the Ireland of the 1970s. These themes are frightening and explosive when played out in real life, in real time. Growing up, I wanted to skip over that and go further back to a more romantic and mythical time in Irish history with the music of Horslips. Horslips was a band of otherworldly figures themselves when they were on stage, and for me, they provided a link to a mystical legacy that the Irish people were heirs to long before England invaded in the 12th century. Of course, I could afford to choose my heroes because I lived in the west of Ireland and never experienced any real violence, unlike the people of the north of Ireland, who did experience violence on a daily basis and had no choice but to live with the reality of a world that O'Casey had written about 50 years before in Juno and the Paycock, and which AIRE was producing 90 years later. I wanted to do this story on AIRE because what they do matters. Portland and the surrounding area is a better place because of the plays the company produces. But AIRE does more than produce and present Irish theatre. They do help to reconcile Irish people to their history and culture, and in many ways, to themselves.
How you doing? I'm good, babe.
Are you ready for your concert? Yeah, you are ready.
Tonight is the beginning of our next theatrical adventure, Juno and the Paycock. We're having what we call a read-through, which is the first time that all the actors and the director and the stage manager get in the same room at the same time and actually read the play through start to finish.
This is it, you know?
Yeah, this is it. Here we go.
I know.
It's like you can no turning back now, sort of.
No, can't change our minds now. I was gonna direct the show, and then finally we convinced Sally to do it. And so it's
tough
really
convincing.
great now. So she has all the
So
responsibility.
now I have all the responsibility. Ah, yes.
I'm free.
It's a way for the actors to meet each other. It's a way for people to become familiar with the material. And it's a way to kind of just get your feet grounded before we begin the rehearsal process, which will start later this week.
I didn't bring it with me. I don't know some of my measurements. They're growing in certain places. You know.
We're using about 4 or 5 actors that have worked with us before, who are part of our company, and then there's another 4 or 5 who are actually quite new to us and probably to each other.
We've been very, very lucky. We've been very, very lucky to meet some really fine people, and also people who do get who do get it. And the joke is, like, when we find those people, we really tend to use them to death. Because like David and Maureen and Paul. Paul used to spend his summers when his mother used to pile the kids off from Boston to Donegal. So he knows what it's the Irish experience is all about.
I met Tony. I was at Portland Stage, and I was auditioning for A Christmas Carol at Portland Stage, and a guy came out, and I went in, and I did my reading, and then the artistic director, Anita Stewart, said to me, "Did you see that guy that just went out?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, his name is Tony Reilly, and he's opening an Irish theater company, and he's looking for actors." And she said, "And I know you just got back from Ireland," which we had. And she said, "Would that be something you'd be interested in?" And I said, "Oh, yes, of course." So she called him back into the room and introduced us. And we talked, and he was having auditions for Playboy of the Western World the next week. And I went to that, and I met Susan at the audition. And we became really good friends right from that point on. We're all of a similar age and background.
You guys, first of all, thank you everybody for being at this table. Nothing is better than this moment, I think, right before we start. My friend Bill calls it carving the turkey. He's like, you're about to carve the turkey for the first time. There's no pressure in the turkey carving. Just by being in the room and the spirit in here already, I think it's going to be a really great experience. So it's all going to come. A note about me and how I work is I tend to work really, really quickly, which means that I'm going to try to have this thing blocked very quickly so that we can actually get into the scenes. So I'm going to be pushing you guys to be as prepared as possible, which to me means off book. Mostly because I just want to get into it and I want us to start to rip it apart a little bit, and I feel like that's difficult to do with the script as in hand. So if you're slow, if it takes you a while, that's fine. Just give me a heads up on that, because I don't want to, if I can at all arrange it, I don't want us to be spending an hour and a half on a scene if people are still on book on it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to do that.
AIRE began in 1998. When we first came up here in 97, which was the first time we came up before we left and then came back, we came up and we decided to create a theater company called AIRE, and we wrote our own production called The Women of Ireland. It had music, it had scenes, it had a lot of poetry. It was really a really good piece, and we just did it at like the Irish American Club, and we did it at the local library, and actually somebody filmed it for public television here for Access. Scarborough Public Access, and after we went back to New York in '98, it was still being shown for like years later. People would say to us, "Hey, you know what? I saw The Women of Ireland the other night on television again." So that was the unofficial beginning of AIRE.
We loved it. We had the greatest time. We were getting AIRE started. We loved Portland, but we were not able to make a living up here, quite frankly. So we decided that we would go back to New York and, both get as good jobs as we could to make money to put aside to come back to Portland. And we did. In 2002, we bought our house up here, and in 2003, we moved back up.
Okay, so tell me what this scene is about.
What this scene is about.
Do you know what I mean? In terms of
Everybody is bugging me to work.
Okay.
Everybody else has got, from Father Pharaoh to Divine to Juno to everybody, expects me, and I'm not fit for work.
Right. So you're really making the case for yourself in terms of what that is.
Right.
You know what I mean? About the
Right.
lyrics and the everything else.
Right. And I don't know, maybe I have to look at the script and maybe does it build, to that? Does it start up, I don't know if it just keeps piling on the excuses.
I think one of the hardest things has been that it's being a self-contained unit in a way. So it's both a benefit and a drawback because we tend to do everything ourselves. Sometimes it's just because other people are working with other companies and don't have the, time and energy to work, or they're doing another show. Or, again, it's maybe sometimes hard for us to let go of our control over every aspect of it. So at this point in our development, that's what we're really focusing on doing, is trying to grow our organization a little larger, include other people, and us being able to step back and trust that the people are going to do the great work that they do.
What we'll do once we get these sort of, certainly
Right.
Act 1 in place, is we'll
It was really sort of out of the blue that they approached me to direct.
this as a play, this is what we're looking at.
For them to bring me in, I felt especially honored because I know that Tony has pretty much directed everything that they've done up until now. So I knew what that transition would be in terms of both being difficult but also being so rich, so fertile, and that was really, so that meant a lot to me that he wanted me involved.
This is the best. This is Sweet Spirit, Hear My Prayer.
I like working on this type of theater, which is this great blend of professional, but yet with a ton of heart, because everybody has to do everything still to sort of, and I love that, like watching, Tony run around with a saw, right before, we're about to start the show. I think that you own the experience in a different way.
I think this is what he's singing to her at the end of that first scene. And he says, "Juno, darling." Because when I Googled those lyrics, this was the closest that ever came up.
F. Scott Fitzgerald once said, "There are no second acts in American life," and we are living proof that indeed there are second acts in American life. We, I certainly went the route of, went into business, worked for corporations and so on for most of my adult life, and always wished I could give more expression to my creative artistic side, and we decided that it was time for us to do that.
So there's one tiny bit of Act 1 that we haven't blocked yet, because we didn't have our Johnny with us.
We talked about it and we dreamt about it, and Tony worked in theater. Theater for me was a road not taken very early in life, and I always hoped that I would get a chance to get back into it.
They come from New York, and they put together a theater company, and it's just sort of like it's the dream, I think, of so many artists, which is, to find an artistic home and to find a place. And it's something that I understand, coming out of New York myself, it's just this need to sort of go somewhere where again you can do it for all the right reasons, and you can do the work that you want to do, and that you can find your way, and it's so great, and they work so hard, and they do these great shows, and I think it's really remarkable, because it does take a tremendous amount of energy. It's like it's a baby, you know what I mean? Like you're having this baby, and you got all these people that you're trying to coordinate, and and that you want to be as invested as you are with this child.
Doing stuff. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's like, maybe you go get the darning stuff off of the mantle. Yeah. Maybe you gotta go back in the curtain room.
They do so much, I don't know how they get it all accomplished. And they do it because they want to, because they want to do theater, and they want to do it where it ends up getting that good response and results. And that takes a lot of work. But it's nuts, I'm telling you, these are crazy people to keep doing it. After doing it once or twice, you say, we can't do this. This is too much. But they go back and they do it again.
Line. Watch yourself, you got a gentleman here.
Oh, nothing I love more than a bucket of bricks.
Aye.
I remember Christmas. My dad gave me a bucket of bricks for Christmas.
Some people have a cat, other people have a dog, but I've got my bucket of bricks.
And I taught it to do tricks.
You will find that most of the theaters, short of Portland Stage, the professional theater who does like 8 performances a week, everybody does a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, and a Sunday matinee, and maybe a Saturday matinee if they can. But for the most part, it's because you push it much. Some people go 4 weeks. Right now, we're still going 3 weeks because we can do well with 3 weeks. That's a good enough time for us to kind of start picking up a head of steam and getting full houses toward the end of the run. And economically, it's one less week that you have to pay for, because renting space is not cheap, and we don't have our own theater right now.
All right, Mary, so let's say...
We have tended to fall into a 6-week rehearsal pattern because we find, and we do 3 rehearsals a week, 3 hours, so we do 9 hours a week. And we found that is a really pretty good rhythm to get into, so that by the time you get into the theater, we have 3 days of what we call tech before we open. That's the time when you get on stage and you add the lights and the costumes and the scenery and stuff, and actually see how the show works together. But we found that doing 6 weeks tends to be a really, really good amount of time to give people enough of a sense of learning their lines well, feeling comfortable, developing their characters, but yet not becoming over-rehearsed and being too stale. But for us, this works.
Mother to go to the doctor and run.
Because, I don't know, Mary's a little above her family. Do you know what I mean? If anybody's going to make it in this family, Mary is. Do you know what I mean? And so there's nothing worse. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if you've ever been in this situation, but there's nothing worse than having somebody on the outside sort of be ashamed of your people. Do you know what I mean? It's really a weird thing. And that to feel that, and that's something interesting for you to hear too. So, I mean, what does Juno think?
Who the hell does he think he is?
Who the hell does he think he is? But is he right? Is there also an aspect?
Well, he's right because of Joxer and Madigan.
Everybody we use, for the most part, they have full-time jobs, they have lives, they've got commitments. I mean, we're not able to pay a lot. This is a labor of love for people. And people are wonderful about readjusting their schedules or getting out of work a little early or whatever they need to do to make it happen. And that's wonderful to deal with people who have that kind of passion and commitment.
It's exactly why I think we all got into theater to begin with, which is because it's something we love to do. It's something that you have to do. You have to sort of feed this appetite a little bit, but there's something to the sacrifice that I think that just sort of makes it even sweeter. And that's great. And you have like this group of people, which is so talented, and yet they're all coming off their 9-to-5s, and at night they get to turn off that other switch and turn on this other one, and it's really nice. And maybe because we don't get to do it all the time or whatnot, it's sweeter.
I mean, there's certainly weeks when it's like, especially when the show is ongoing, that you do get worn out. I think there's always the week before the show is about to open where you have your technical rehearsals, which is where you're dealing with all the lighting and the sound, and you have to make sure you're in the right place. And it's sort of the director's looking to see how it's trying to put everything together. That's usually the few days before the show actually opens. So you're having a rehearsal virtually every night, and then you're having shows, and those weeks are very tough. And then certainly by the end of the run of a show, you're often ready to put the show to bed and get your life back. But that usually, but then it's like a week or two, then I'm like, all right, what am I going to do next?
I've tried multiple times to kind of like try and pursue other artistic things, you know, but I just always keep coming back to it. There was this one point in college, my sophomore year, when I was like, that's it. I've washed my hands of it, you know, like I just can't deal with it anymore. And that lasted for about 4 months.
We're going to try to run Act 2 and Act 3, which we just blocked a few minutes ago, so it's going to be like a trade wreck.
It's a great pleasure to know you.
It doesn't matter to me the part that I play in any show. I just want to be a part of the production, just to be there, and like I'll go and just watch another theater group rehearse, even if I have nothing to do with it, just because I love the process of putting a show together. I'm trying to remind myself that this can't be the only thing that I do.
And break it.
Growing up, I went to a pretty progressive school, arts school, and I sort of fell into acting in about 3rd, 4th grade, and did a lot of shows through 9th grade, and then I went off to boarding school and college, and I didn't do any acting, and I really didn't get back into it until I was in my mid-20s. I sort of fell into it because my mother had gotten ill, and I was at home with her, and so I wanted to do something. So I took some acting classes, and I sort of fell back in love with it.
My parents especially encouraged me to do some theater. I have stage fright. I was incredibly shy as a kid. I would lock the door when like company would come over to the house. I would just go into my room and hide. So one of the best ways to cure that sort of thing is to put you out there.
I was about 4. My first show was The Dining Room. The role that I played was a girl at a birthday party. And the director, who is a good friend of mine and I worked with a lot throughout my childhood, but she baked a new cake every show and ice cream. So like, I mean, I was bribed. How else do you tempt a child into the world of theater?
You know, high school is terrifying, I think, for everybody. And I was lucky because I had a pretty strong group of friends. But theater was always where the misfits, you know, sort of landed, and I love that about that. So you sort of felt like you were, you know, in this the island of, you know, misfit toys, or everyone's a little bit broken. But in that world, they're all validated. And I don't know. I think that theater takes great courage anyway, and to get out in front of people. And so to create the atmosphere where you're all doing that together, you can't help but like sort of have this high. And so without doing drugs, we were all getting high on theater, and I just love that everybody was accepted. I can remember thinking to myself like this is it. Like this is really, that's what I should be doing. And like, there's never been anything else. In a way that's pretty stupid. I wish I had some other sort of skill.
a certain natural evolution of a show from the reading to the opening night. I think obviously your reading is just to get people together, hear them say those lines for the first time, and then you're breaking down the play into its constituent scenes and acts and building from there. And then the director really starting making sure that people are hitting their marks or delivering the performance that he or she wants to see. And it incrementally gets better. I think there's usually like a big leap in the first 2 weeks of just getting the thing on its feet, so to speak, and then people getting off book, learning their lines, and then things start to compress. Ideally, the actor is sort of looking through their script every so often, doing that process, learning their lines, but thinking about what their character is supposed to be doing, or trying to get a handle on who this character is. I mean, I think it was nice that I was able to sit with our director just to sort of think about the character. Because again, Bentham is this character who you're not really sure where he's coming from or what his motives are. So it was just good to sit with her and think about how we wanted to, shape the character.
Direction is just that. It's sort of, I don't know. It's going into a room of people, and and I have a hypothesis, or I've got a theory about where the play should go. That's never where the play goes, because the other 10 people in the room steer the course. I can't direct the play that's in my head. I gotta direct the play that's in the room, and that's about the individuals who show up and what they bring. And that's when it gets to be really fun, because again, it's not like there's a puppet master and it's like, oh, you guys should do this. It's watching Paul Haley do something that makes no sense whatsoever, and yet say, I have no idea what that is, but I love it. And this is how this links up to that, and can we get more of that here, and blah, 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 and the next thing you know, I never could have dreamt up that performance.
I like the process of trying to find out what you can do with the role, and you're never satisfied. Most actors aren't. You're never satisfied with where you get, but you still make some progress toward what you hope. Each time you hope to get a little closer, and a little closer. And when you find people that you work well with on stage, you get that satisfaction of creating some kind of an atmosphere and a vibe, whatever you want to call it, a connection on stage that feels very good. And if you do all those things together, you're affecting the audience, the story and the text, the material interests you, you like how it's written. All that provides a pretty good amount of satisfaction, makes you want to do it again.
And then you stay up, and if anything, you rise up more. I think that's what
After.
yeah.
Okay.
And then it's just like, and it's just so fast.
Okay.
I directed my first show when I was in college, and I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be an actor so badly. And we had this horrible thing called sophomore review, when you had to sit down and you walk in and the whole faculty sits around a big table and they basically, destroy your dreams is what happens. And the faculty told me I would never be an actor. And they're like, you're never going to be a professional actor, so don't even try. And then the chair of the department, who I couldn't stand, said, but you're in my directing class and you have got real capacity as a director. Like real capacity as a director. You should do that. And that was like the last play. Like I walked away from it, I pushed back, and I was like, you, and you can shove it. I'm never gonna be a director. I'm gonna show you, I'm never gonna do it. Even though it felt like such a great fit. Like I loved how it felt, to be in that role. But it took me a long time before I directed it. Even still, it's like if people will praise me for directing, I'm like, that's great, it's great. And then, it's sort of like slip my wrist a little bit. I'm like, oh, I thought I was going to be an actor. But you just can't win. You just can't win. And people praise my acting. I'm like, oh, but you should see my directing. It's total crap. It's total crap.
I'm trying to keep you, Maureen, on your center. Right now, we're getting a lot of this, which weakens her.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's a matter of if we're gonna do this,
Keep right on him.
It's like, and like let it bring, let Tony sort of be the one to move.
All right.
And what I'm looking for is more of a, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's more, it's just more of a get rid of them, and then a slow stalking.
All right.
Of that
Okay.
versus, you know what I mean?
It's very difficult for me because I'm so used to being the boss and calling the shots. And like the other night, I was like watching Sally stage something, and I was like, if he just went over there, then she, and I kind of opened my mouth, and afterwards I had to go back and say, I am so sorry.
And it was funny because I would sometimes see Tony like biting back, you know, and I was like, Tony, what are you thinking? Blah, 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 blah. You know, it's like, okay, yeah. You know, or this isn't the time for that, or blah, 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 you know, and he was always like, I'm a jerk, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. And it's like, no, it's like, you see it, you know, you see it, and that's good.
And the nice thing about it is she's working very fast because she's trying to get us to a point. The sooner you have that blueprint, the sooner you can start to really explore the text, and you can really explore the relationships and all those things. You know, once you've gotten that the rough stuff out. It's like a house. It's like building the frame of a house, and then you can start putting in the walls and the ceiling and the electricity and all the things that are going to make living in the house halfway decent.
It's like another shot of adrenaline. It's, okay, now we've got the bare bones, and we've got the, we know where we're going, and you know, whether we're exiting here or entering here, and whether we're going to be at the table or this, and that's all wonderful because you got to get that first. You got to get the skeleton. And then it's because it's layered, it's multi-layered, you know, you get deeper and deeper and deeper into this story. And because you're playing these people, you begin to understand the story more. And the more you're informed by that, the better you are as an actor. So you feel yourself kicked up a notch, you know, and you think, oh, and you don't even know it, but you'll be in rehearsal and you'll suddenly say, oh, I got it tonight. I got it, you know, because there are some nights when you say, I don't know what I'm doing, you know, and this is crap. But, and then there's another night when maybe you've thought about it the night before or something, and you come in and it falls into place. And then the nice thing is, I think, you know, and the more you do it, the richer it gets, which is why it's sad to only do it for 3 weeks, because you'd really feel like you're just hitting your stride.
It makes me nervous because, you know, I'm still very uncomfortable with my accent. It doesn't feel natural. I think that's part of it. And so it's still a very conscious effort. It's just certain vowel sounds. Every other accent I've ever had to perform with, I've just already kind of roughly had in my pocket because of experience. On top of it, it's still this particular piece. It's the only part that I'm not off book on.
Yeah, I know.
So we come in.
Yep.
You go in first, right?
Yep.
And you're the one saying, who are you guys, basically?
Yep, who are you? Get over there. And then...
And what are you doing while I'm checking? No, I'm going right into Sean Boyle, that's right.
Yeah.
We don't know yet how this curtain's going to work. It may go this way.
It may go the other way.
It may go the other way. So
I'm here looking at the window.
Right. So if you're here and I make the noise, right, and you pull that back, and
Head here, his hand's gonna go there, he's gonna scream. And as he's screaming, his head's gonna pop back. That's how you know his head is coming back.
Yep.
Wait for that to happen before you get your line.
Yep.
So go right from grabbing Tess and just do that much.
Man, this is the first Irish show I suppose I've been in. I was more scared that it was a new group of people. I've only been acting with students for the last 4 years, so I was pretty intimidated, and I'm still a little intimidated, but in a great way.
What you have to boom. What you want to watch is elbow.
Yeah.
Because you don't want it could nick your elbow, so you gotta be very careful with that. And again, Matt, because you're a big guy, make sure that you're not doing any of this, because it's like he's in a really vulnerable position down here. So it's just pull back and kiss off his head.
I love combat. I love it. I think it's a really helpful tool. It's funny. I always try to choreograph for the fighters. You know, figuring out who's really comfortable in their bodies, who isn't. Because nothing's worse than like a bad stage combat. Like nothing will take you out of a play quicker than that.
Come back. So it's gonna help, Johnny, if you have your head sort of down. You wouldn't shoot an old comrade as if trying to nestle into her.
Yeah.
So then that way this move is much stronger.
In this play, it's funny because I got a couple guys who have a lot of energy, and so for those guys, it's about reining them in a little bit. It's okay to get bruised. Like, you're gonna get bruised in this stuff because you're doing things repeatedly, but you just can't get hurt. Like, I don't want anybody to get hurt.
Tess is here. Come here, Tess. Oh God, she's doing the one arm,
which probably isn't the safest way of working. But I think it's safe. It's safe. It's safe-ish.
Great. And so he wants a student to the top of the line. So, and is it paid for yet? No, isn't paid for yet? Oh, so much the better.
And again, it's. I look at the violence in the play. You only resort to violence when the words no longer work. I can't communicate this in any other way.
Alrighty, I got the list.
Now,
We're praying this is not a wild goose chase. Alrighty, I got this.
This poor car.
You got the phone, sweetie?
I do.
That's real quick.
Have you got your ads out?
No. We met yesterday with the ad rep from, we're going to do a radio ad. So I've got to write some copy this weekend, and then he'll take a look at it just to give us some feedback, and since he's seen many more of these than we have. And then we'll go into the studio. Tony and I will go into the studio next week and record it. We have a pretty good idea of what we want to say, but we have to get it to a very clean and concise 60 seconds. So
right. And we're waiting on our posters, which is a big part of the whole, in the past, that's all we've ever been able to afford to do is posters. It's about the cheapest way you can get you get your story out, because, ads in papers are expensive, and, radio is expensive, but posters, you can throw a poster together for $150, $200.
as actor managers, we have a huge stake, because this is our audience that we have been working to present good stuff to, who have been responding to us. This is our budget. This is our money. This is, if we don't make money on this thing, then we don't get to do another. So all these things, I think, help to make us the control freaks that we are, because we have a huge stake in the outcome.
I'll never forget walking out on stage and just about to have to give this big monologue. And I remember looking out, and there was one seat empty. And I kept thinking, wait a second, we're sold out. Why is there a seat empty?
Right.
We had a waiting list. Why is there a seat empty? And my first line was like totally out the door. I was like,
whatever it is, I love it.
USM is the University of Southern Maine. They have a theater program that it's out in Gorham. One of the first things we did when we came up here in 2003 was to contact USM. They've been very, very kind to us and generous to us as far as using their stock. They have a great costume collection. We've costumed so many shows. We use their set pieces, the chairs. I mean, so many shows. It's so funny. We've done so many shows, like we know the stuff. And we've used a lot of the actors, a lot of the young kids out of there over the years. And we continue to use them. Joe Bearor in our show, who's playing Johnny. And we've used a lot of tech people over the years, people too who have done lighting design and set design and building. Yeah, so they've been a tremendous resource. And hopefully we've given back to the university and giving students a professional theater. I mean, a lot of times it's some of the only professional credits they have. That's great. In Act 2, when they become more affluent, they bring, they have things in their home that, they one of those things where people just go out and buy, like that they wouldn't. So all of a sudden, hey, Sue.
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect.
Right.
Oh, gaudy for days, baby. I love it. We got some possibilities here.
Living in Portland is like doing a play because you are in this incredible community of other artists, filmmakers, musicians, and First Friday Night Art Walk. The community is so rich and so supportive of each other, and I love that. And you don't get that in a lot of, certainly not places this size.
I was talking to one of the other artistic directors recently about how Portland is becoming known as this food capital. And I was saying, you know, and wouldn't it be nice if, along with food, people came up here because it was a center of theater? What's wrong with dreaming about that?
I mean, the difficulty is that there's not full-time work, you know, and that is just the nuts and bolts part of it. But in some ways, just like people coming in from a day job, sometimes that makes us better artists, I think, because it's different when you're employed full-time, you know, because then it can sort of be a job versus it's a job, but it's like a love job, so it's like a lob. You know what I mean? It's like it's a different thing. And there have been times when I've been very lucky and worked very consistently, but I would get tired, you know. And I feel super lucky because I get to act and direct, and that combination works very well for me. Like if I do like 3 acting projects in a row, I'll be ready to direct. Like I'm gonna need a break from that. And if I do 3 directing projects, I'm ready to act. Like I'm ready to take, because it's a different brain for me. I've got a couple different brains up here. Something the voices tell me. So it's really good to have them play off each other, you know. But the hard thing is then when you're in between those gigs, you know, and maybe, I don't know, things like benefits or crazy crap like that, like the reality of all that sucks, which makes me crazy, which is why I think so many people stop being artists. It's because, you know, I don't have benefits. So I stopped being an artist, and I got a job that got me benefits, and it's just like that makes me profoundly sad.
We always say, oh, we're a mom and pop organization, but the truth of the matter is that every theater in town is basically a mom and pop organization. There's a couple of people who do the majority of the work, and then you kind of, if you're lucky, you'll find people who are, you know, who will, you know, come on board and help you and to get things done. But boy, there's been so many shows that we've done everything, and then we put like different names in the program because we don't want people to think this. We're like egomaniacs. Set design, Tony Reilly. Directed by Tony Reilly. Featuring Tony Reilly. Costumes by Susan Reilly. Starring Susan Reilly. Programmed by Susan Reilly. I mean, it's like embarrassing.
I use my nom de théâtre is Kate Egan. This is a name I have used for probably since I was like 15 years old. This was always my Irish surrogate names, and whenever like people would, like it'd be in a bar and people would ask me my name, I would always tell them I was Kate Egan. And you just take Anthony Martin because his name is Anthony Martin Reilly, so he just drops off the right.
I'll put Tony Martin in. Who is the guy from Little Britain who was the acting teacher? What was his name? We've put that one in.
Oh, Bernard Chumley.
Bernard Chumley. Take it easy. We're going to go stop at the print shop and pick up the posters. He just called while we were in the shop and said they were ready.
Good.
it's always scary, like, towards the end of the rehearsal process. I think you go into, I personally go into it with just believing that this is going to be terrific. This is going to be terrific. And, you know, you're all gung-ho, you just have the greatest, and then, you know, some of the realities start to set in. You know, you start saying, and then your expectations go down, and then you do it, and then everybody loves it, and then it's a 6, you know, and then you're up. So it's not scary going in. Do you think it's scary going in?
No, it's like you said, it's like an unwritten slate where you kind of are projecting your best, you know, most exciting prospects upon. Actually, it's really kind of exciting. It's, you know, I like doing projects because it's like, it's new, it's different, it's a new beginning. And maybe you made some mistakes on the last one. Well, you know, this is a chance. You learn. You just keep learning every step of the way. You know, 6 years we've been doing this and we're still learning. And it's wonderful. I mean, it's worth getting up in the morning because there's always something new to learn.
How was your day, Tony?
Well, you know what? It wasn't a horrible day compared to like yesterday. I took an Ambien, so I actually had 8 hours sleep last night, where the night before I had 3. I might as well just have children, you know? So today wasn't too bad, and Craig really had everything pretty much under control. We got here, and so, I mean, things are, as far as the sets and everything are concerned, and the, you know, I mean, everything is just really totally under control. So, but me wife ran the car into a...
All right, I ran the car past a mailbox.
and
I
took
had a
off.
little encounter with a mailbox.
Close encounters.
Yes, at least I didn't hurt the mailbox.
That's true. The
That
mailbox would have
really,
sued us.
Sued us, yeah.
Right.
So.
Right. And then I just sliced
Except
my...
actually, I just really just took off because I was like, oh, Christ.
And I sliced my thumb cutting the Blessed Virgin Mary's picture.
Tonight is opening night. Nerves always happen with opening night. I don't care how many shows you do, at least for me. But it'll be a nervous night, so it's good. But it's good. It means you care.
It's a present for my sister's birthday. She knows exactly what I like. Yes. So we've come to the theater to end the day. We've been to the ocean, even though we're from here, and this is the end of my birthday celebration is to sit and be in the theater.
I've seen a couple AIRE performances before, and they're always impeccable. Philadelphia, Here I Come, and The Lonesome West. That was really tragically funny, and this one is as well. They're always very good at having those real human moments mixed with a little bit of the kind of agony and a lot of comedy as well.
When I know it's on me, I just smile.
I'm off. It ties me to my roots. I went to Ireland a couple of years ago and traveled around for a couple of weeks. This is just a real good connection to my family.
How's it going, guys?
It is more than entertainment. There is something very special about going to see theater. That experience, it sticks with you. It's like if you're not a huge fan of baseball, if you go see a game at Fenway Park, you're going to remember it, and it's always going to be special for some reason or another.
This has been a really lovely experience. And I think that mostly comes down to just the people who have been in the play. And I'd heard this about AIRE, and this is why I was really excited to work with them, is that there really is a feeling of family. I felt welcomed immediately.
All I miss about this play, the affection that we've managed to develop for these people, even though I mean, I know no one's perfect, so therefore no character is really going to be perfect, and if they are perfect, then they're probably underdeveloped. But these characters in particular, especially this is coming from a very judgmental person, they're ridiculously unlovable in so many ways, and yet, we're just kind of all charmed by them.
The smell, the taste.
Whack it!
Do you?
They say this all the time about theater, is that you just sort of you have all these little lifetimes, you know what I mean? And when you fall in love with all these people, and then, in 2 months, then they're gone.
It's kind of a mixed blessing, It'd be good to get our lives back. We spend every day from morning to night, dealing with box office, dealing with marketing, dealing with everything. So it's kind of it's like for those few minutes when you're on stage, that you actually get to go on stage, it's sort of that's wonderful, that's super. But then the rest of the time, it's just always work. So, on the one hand, you can't get too upset about the fact that this is the last show because, I'm thinking okay, now who's going to do what and what's going to happen and how we're going to take that down and where that's going to go and blah, 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 blah. So I think when it's all said and done, I think we're going to sit down and cry, and reflect on it. We're trying very hard to, reflect on the experience, what it was like, what was good, what was bad, what didn't work, how can we change it, what do we need to do going forward.
And that was it. The run was over.
Thank you, guys.
A few of them will come together sometime in the future to act or participate in some way in another play, but they'll probably never all be together again as a troupe. The characters have dissolved. The set is gone, taken down to be replaced with another place and time.
When the play ends and suddenly your family just gets scattered and there's this unbelievable feeling of loneliness. I've been in plays and I've really tried to stay distant, emotionally distant, go in, do your job, but don't get too attached and don't get too open with people because, it's just gonna end. But I think I'm discovering the right balance.
Many actors say it's not for the audience or for the few minutes on stage that they act. It's primarily for the process, that period of time from beginning to end, which holds all the pleasure and pain it takes to put on a successful play, as the reason they do what they do. Theatre people get used to loss. They learn how to create worlds and dismantle worlds, and do it over and over again. For centuries, we've been able to think about the messages that well-written plays have presented. But having spent some time with AIRE, I now know that beyond the message of the playwright, this building and rebuilding of fictional worlds is important to think about too. I have seen many changes in Ireland over the past 30 years, and I am guilty to feeling pained at times because of some of those changes. It's a selfish reaction, I know. Many of these changes came about to provide jobs and improve lives, and end the reason why people emigrate in the first place. In those instances, I know I have not moved out of my own play, a play that ended its run a long time ago. Actors and theatre people let the safety of what has become familiar to them and what they have worked so hard to achieve fade into memory, and they welcome the new relationships and adventures that another script will bring. It's good when those of us who leave home are able to do the same, wherever that home may be.
I thought it was excellent. I read the book whenever I was at school, and I was just telling my friend that the characters were exactly how I ever imagined they would be.
Oh, it was fabulous. Fabulous. Brought me to tears more than once. Very touching.
It was wonderful. It was dark with slivers of light and very powerful. Very, very good. Very well done.
Thanks.
I'm impressed because I think it's probably as good a production as I'd find in Boston and a lot cheaper.
I'm going to use like really one-armed people next time. None of this fake stuff.
I think Portland has a very good theater scene in many, many ways. But I really, the two productions I've seen here, Irish plays, have been very, very powerful and very well done.
Tim likes bruise.
Oh my God. And show me belly bruise.
He saw that one the other day. Show the back one. Show your back one.
I don't know if he... No! That's plenty.